You paid for me, now do it." The rancher did it. And then, he had a wife. The sun was melting into the Texas horizon when the rancher found her. Barefoot, bloody, barely breathing, she stood by the old oak, her pale skin scratched by thorns, her torn dress hanging like the last piece of her dignity. He stopped his horse, staring at the girl who looked like she'd crawled out of hell. "You lost, miss?" he asked, voice rough like gravel. She didn't answer, just looked at him, trembling, eyes empty yet screaming for help. He climbed off his horse, tossed her a blanket, and said, "You'll freeze out here." When she didn't take it, he stepped closer, slow, like you would to a wild animal. Finally, she whispered, "They sold me." He froze. "Sold you?" Her voice cracked. "You paid for me, now do it." The words hit him like a hammer. He realized what she thought, that he was one of them. He took a breath, steady but heavy. "I didn't buy you, girl. I'm just trying to help." But she didn't believe him. She stumbled back, clutching the blanket like it was her last line of defense. He saw the chains around her ankles, bruises in the shape of fingers. Whoever had done this to her, they weren't men, they were monsters. He sighed. "Name's Eli," he said softly. "I run the Miller Ranch down the way. You come with me, I'll make sure you get cleaned up and fed." "That's all." She hesitated, looked at his horse, looked at him, then nodded slowly. They rode through the open fields under the dying light, silence stretching between them. She held onto the saddle horn like she was afraid it would vanish. At the ranch house, Eli gave her his late wife's robe and let her wash up in the small room near the barn. He didn't ask questions, he could see enough in her eyes. When she came out, she sat quietly by the fire, staring into the flames. Eli poured her coffee, handed it to her, and said, "You're safe here. No one's gonna hurt you." She nodded but didn't speak, just stared at the fire like she was trying to burn her past away. And when the night deepened, and the wind howled outside, she whispered to herself, "They'll come for me." Eli heard her. He didn't say a word, but he loaded his rifle before turning in. Because he knew, she was right. Morning came with dust and fear. Eli found her sitting by the barn, staring at the horse tied under the old tree. She was wearing one of his shirts now, too big, sleeves rolled to her elbows. "You didn't sleep," he said. She shook her head. "Didn't dare." He leaned against the fence. "Who were they?" Her lips trembled. "Men from the camp near Dry Creek. They trade women. I was sold to pay my father's debt." She looked away, voice breaking. "You were supposed to be the one who bought me." Eli's jaw clenched. "That's not what I do." She gave a hollow laugh. "Doesn't matter. Somebody will come for me." He took a step closer. "Not while you're under my roof." Her eyes flickered, unsure whether to trust him. But something about the way he said it, low, certain, made her believe him for the first time. Days passed. She started to eat again. Spoke a little more. He found out her name, Clara. She'd grown up near Austin before everything went wrong. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. One afternoon, as Eli was mending a fence, he saw riders in the distance. 3 of them, moving slow, deliberate, dust trailing behind them like a warning. He called out, "Clara, get inside." She froze. "It's them." Eli loaded his rifle, eyes narrowing. The men stopped near the gate. The one in front, big hat, red scarf, spat on the ground and said, "Heard you got something that don't belong to you." Eli didn't blink. "Ain't got nothing of yours." The man grinned. "Girl says otherwise." Eli's hand tightened around the gun. "She's free now." The man's grin faded. "No such thing as free, old man. She's property." Clara screamed from behind the door, "I'm not your property." The man's smile turned cruel. "Guess we'll settle that in front of everyone." That night, Eli rode into town with Clara in the back of the wagon, her wrists bound again, not by his choice, but because the law demanded proof. The men had claimed her as their purchase. The sheriff, too afraid to intervene, ordered a hearing in the barn at dawn. When the first light broke through the slats of the old barn, Clara stood on a wooden platform, chains around her ankles. Eli watched from the shadows as the men who'd bought and beaten her filled the seats. The man in the red scarf raised his fist and shouted, "Justice!" But as the sunlight streamed through the dusty air, something in Eli's heart broke. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "She's no man's property. Not while I'm alive." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him. And just then, Clara looked up, tears shining in her dirt-streaked face. For the first time, she saw not a rancher, but a man willing to fight for her soul. The barn was silent, too silent. You could almost hear the dust floating through the sunlight that streamed down from the roof cracks. Clara stood barefoot on the wooden platform, chains biting her ankles, her torn dress clinging to her skin. Her eyes searched the crowd, faces blurred by shadow and hate. Eli stood a few feet away, hat low, jaw tight. He wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. The man in the red scarf smirked, stepping into the light. "So, rancher, you paid for her. Now finish what you started." The words twisted in the air like a blade. Every man there waited, watching, whispering. Eli's voice was calm but filled with something dangerous. "You think a man's worth is proven by what he can own? Then you don't know what being a man means." The crowd muttered, some laughed, but no one missed the quiet fire in his tone. He stepped closer to Clara. "You're not property," he said softly. "Not today, not ever." Red Scarf laughed bitterly. "You think you can change the law with words?" Eli's eyes narrowed. "No, but I can change what happens next." The man reached for his gun. The moment slowed, the air thick, everyone holding their breath. But Eli was faster. One sharp crack echoed through the barn. The man staggered back, clutching his arm, blood soaking through his sleeve. The crowd erupted in shouts. The sheriff stumbled to his feet, yelling, "Enough! Stand down!" But Eli wasn't finished. He walked to the platform, picked up the heavy iron key from the table, and unlocked Clara's chains one by one. The clinking metal fell to the floor like the sound of judgment breaking. Then he turned to the men. "Every scar on her body," he said, voice shaking now, "is because men like you forgot what mercy means. You think power is in a gun or a coin, but real power is in what you choose to protect." No one spoke, not one. He took Clara's hand and led her down from the platform. She stumbled once, but he caught her. Together they walked through the parted crowd, out into the blinding daylight. The wind hit their faces, cold, honest, free. Behind them, the sheriff's voice rang out, "She's free." The matter's settled, but the town wouldn't forget. Some would call Eli a fool. Others would call him a hero. He didn't care. All he wanted was to leave the shadows behind. That night, back at the ranch, the fire crackled softly in the cabin. Clara sat across from him, wearing a clean white dress he'd found among his late wife's things. Her hands trembled as she held the warm cup of coffee. Eli looked at her and said quietly, "You can stay here till you're ready, or you can leave at sunrise. Either way, you owe me nothing." She stared at the fire for a long time. "Why did you do it?" she whispered. He took a slow breath. "Because once, I had a wife. They took her from me the same way they tried to take you. And I swore, if I ever saw that kind of evil again, I'd stop it." Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled faintly. "Then maybe God sent you." Eli didn't answer. He just handed her a small silver locket, his wife's. "Keep it," he said, "so you never forget that you were worth saving." She opened it and saw the engraving inside. "Love makes us brave." Years later, the townsfolk would still talk about that morning, the day the rancher stood up to the men of Dry Creek. Some said he went too far. Others said he saved a soul. But for Clara, it was simpler than that. It was the day she stopped being a victim. And every time she looked out at the horizon, she remembered his words, the last ones he ever said before the fever took him months later. "You paid for me, now do it," she had once said in fear. And he had done it. Not with violence, not with ownership, but with mercy, with courage, with love. When the wind rustled through the old oak where they first met, she'd whisper to it like a prayer. "You didn't buy me, Eli. You freed me." And somewhere in that endless Texas sky, it always felt like he heard her. Thank you so much for watching this story till the very end. Your support means more than words can ever say. If you felt the depth of this journey, don't forget to give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll keep bringing powerful stories to life. and your presence here makes all the difference.